According to reports, the NBA and network executives finalized contracts that will make Amazon Prime and NBC new partners while keeping ESPN as the home of the NBA Finals. The agreements will extend for 11 seasons. It'll be worth $76 billion. And TNT right now, they're on the outside looking in, but they still could stay in the broadcasting game of the NBA right now. So let's talk about what this means for the league and its fans. And we're going to do that with Brandon Costa. He is the director of digital at Sports Video Group. He joins me now. Brandon, how are you doing?
Good, Dex. Thanks so much for having me on, man. Great to talk to you.
No, great to talk to you. Long time no see. We used to work together back in the day, and it's good to reconnect to talk about this. And Brandon, let's tip this conversation off with this. What do you think the impact of these new TV deals with Amazon, ESPN, and NBC will have on the NBA's reach and also their engagement with fans? How do you think that works out?
Yeah, it's obviously a big win financially for the NBA. You mentioned the number, which is a pretty sizable increase over the league's last rights deal, which is pretty fascinating considering that generally NBA's ratings are down nationally. But of course, ratings are not the only factor in these things. In fact, they might not be among the most important factors. You've got legacy television companies and streaming companies that are competing for our attention. And the way that you do that now is with live sports. And with the exception of the NFL, the NBA is probably the most nationally prestigious of any of the American sports leagues. It's got the most diverse audience, the youngest audience, largely speaking. But to your original question, in terms of reach and engagement, I don't think it honestly changes a ton for the league. It does get them on another broadcast network, obviously in NBC, which is significant. And it expands them to more streaming services, which essentially boosts discoverability. But I think from a fan perspective, it does fragment the audience further and generally add to confusion on games and where they will be on a given night.
Yeah, and we'll get back to that. I want to ask you a bit more about the fragmentation of the audience there, but I also have to talk about TNT in this, right? Because we know that they've been a staple for NBA broadcasts for decades. How significant is it for the network to potentially be on the outside looking in with these new deals?
Yeah, for those of us who follow this stuff, this is the most historically significant part of this thing, and the thing that's probably been the most surprising over the past couple of months as this has played out. The NBA on TNT has existed on Turner Sports and whatever it's been called since 1988. And not being able to have the NBA and also inside the NBA would be significant. Now, they're not totally out of the woods yet. As you said, there's still a bit of an outside shot. Warner Brothers Discovery, which is TNT Sports' parent company, has 5 days in their contract, it's reported, to officially match whatever this is and when this officially gets announced. Now, it's been reported that David Zaslav, who's the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery Sports, has said that if they were to match, they would try to target that C package, which is the Amazon one. So even so, if they do find their way to fight their way back into this, it's going to be a demotion in the pecking order for TNT. It would mean probably, essentially, maybe no playoffs. It would definitely mean out of the game for conference finals. So yeah, this is historically significant if they're on the outside looking in. You can't understate the importance of inside the NBA. It's perhaps the most universally beloved sports media thing that has existed over the past few years, over the past few decades, I should say. When you think about Ernie Johnson and Chuck and Shaq and Kenny, Ernie's been hosting that show since 1999. It's widely regarded as perhaps the best studio show that's ever existed. Now, there are reports that it could exist in some way still on TNT, which would honestly be surprising to me if they didn't have any games. There's always the possibility that Amazon says they want to throw their money at these things and try to keep Inside NBA as a package. Now, if you take Barkley at his word, he says he's retiring at the end of next season. You could certainly see a world where Ernie Johnson decides he's done more than enough. He's already a sports broadcasting Hall of Famer, and it's very unlikely he would leave Atlanta or his family. So yeah, you can't understate the significance of what it would mean for the NBA to not be on TNT, which has been, I'd say, you could argue, is probably the most popular distribution method amongst fans in terms of some of the programming that they offer.
Oh, yeah, I'd absolutely agree. It almost is weird to even think about it in that way because we've been watching NBA on TNT for so long. We're watching inside the NBA for so long, but we'll see if TNT is able to stay in the game. Now, streaming platforms like Amazon, they are increasingly getting involved in sports broadcasting. How do you see the rise of these platforms affecting traditional sports viewership?
Yeah, this is another big fish in Amazon's boat, right? I mean, they have Thursday Night Football, which they've done for a couple of years now, and that's actually done better ratings and viewership that I think skeptics might have believed when they were going into that deal. Now, obviously, the NFL is a totally different animal, and Amazon has their rights deals internationally as well, so they've become a pretty big player. And perhaps, I don't know about you, but one of the most exciting things or not exciting, but surprising things for me in this deal is that Amazon Prime Video might be getting a conference final in this, and that they would alternate with NBC every other year on one of the other conference finals. ESPN obviously getting exclusive rights to the NBA finals throughout this entire deal, and then getting the other conference final, whether it's Eastern or Western Conference on that year. Look, on its surface, it looks like Prime Video and Amazon are the only streaming disruptor in this whole conversation. But don't forget that ESPN is probably going to put games exclusively on ESPN Plus. You know, Peacock is going to get a big chunk of games. So there's a lot of streaming services that not only games are going to end up on, but fans that if they don't have them already are going to need to have them in order to watch these games. So while on the surface, Prime Video and Amazon are the big, hey, there's a streaming service getting into the mix here. I mean, ESPN Plus, whatever the venue streaming platform becomes, Peacock, there's a lot of layers to this thing, and there's a lot of streamers that not only want games on their platform, but want them exclusively on the platform, which is where things get complicated for fans.
Yeah, and that does get complicated for fans because you wonder about the fans who either, A, maybe don't have Prime Video right now, don't have Peacock right now for whatever reason. If you're a casual NBA fan, will you go and then purchase those to see the games? Now, keeping it in that realm, from a consumer standpoint, do you think this deal with Amazon, ESPN, and NBC will be beneficial, or could it potentially fragment the viewing experience? You talked a little bit about that before. How do you think this affects the consumer?
I mean, look, we've lived in an era now where being a sports fan, this is the best of times and the worst of times. I mean, we grew up in a time where you were lucky to get up, one national game a week, and you almost never saw any other teams out of your market until it became playoff time. But look, there's a lot of layers to this onion, right? We're talking about exclusively just the national rights deals here. There's still the regional sports network factor here that adds to the confusion, in my opinion. If you're a Knicks fan, like I know you are, you still have your cable provider with MSG Network, where a vast majority of games are going to end up. But the Knicks going into next year are going to be a popular pick for all of these national broadcasters. ESPN's going to want a piece, NBC's going to want a piece, and Prime Video are all going to want a piece of the Knicks next year. So is my game on MSG tonight? Do I need a cable subscription for that? If I don't have cable, I can buy exclusive direct-to-consumer streaming through MSG. But then when those games are exclusively on ESPN or exclusively on NBC or exclusively on Prime Video, I'm going to need all those platforms as well. It's expensive and it's confusing. People largely have become accustomed to streaming. I honestly don't think it's the technology that's the barrier anymore. I think people are really good and accustomed to using their smart TVs to access apps, whether they're watching Netflix or whether they've been watching the NFL on these things. I think fans are actually used to the technology for the large part, but it's an extremely justified response for a fan who's working a regular 9 to 5 and just gets home, plops in front of the TV after putting their kids to bed, and just wants to know where the game is. I think that they're totally justified in feeling like, man, this can get really ridiculous sometimes, not only with the number of services you have to pay for, but even just keeping track of where the games are on a given night.
Yeah, I really wonder how that affects, again, as I've been talking about, the casual fan here. Not necessarily the diehard NBA fan, but the casual fan. How does that impact? We will see. Either way, the thing that's left to see is, will TNT stay in the game? Will they not? But for now, it seems like it's going to be ESPN, NBC, and Amazon broadcasting the NBA with a deal for 11 years following this upcoming NBA season. That is Brandon Costa. He is the director of digital for Sports Video Group. Does such a great job with them. Brandon, good to reconnect, good to talk with you. We'll have to do this again another time. This was fantastic.
Would love to. Always a pleasure, man. Take care.
Thank you.